A lot of the interest in spiritualism in the mid-1800s was related to these things that seemed otherworldly and divine at the time. Like, how do you explain electricity? How do you explain me in this country being able to tap on this machine and you in that country know what I'm saying to you? It really was a period of mystery and awe.
Is there anything more misunderstood in history than magic? Here's what your history classes conveniently skipped. The world was not built by logic and reason alone. It was built by something much more ancient.
The Hidden History of Magick tells the true stories of the astrologer in the White House, the intuitive who sat alongside Gilded Age tycoons, and the black ops government agencies that have used mediums to talk to aliens since the 30s.
These moments often get covered up, sidelined, or buried because they prove something. Magic is not fringe. It's used every day.
Because while we've been trained to trust everything but our own intuition, the people in power never stop consulting the stars. They know something we've been taught to forget. Magic is real, and we have access to it.
I'm Rhiannon Houch.
And I'm Erin Bagwell.
We are psychics, witches, mothers, and storytellers ready to break down history's best-kept secrets.
Welcome to the Hidden History of Magick.
Today on the show is the queen who loved sex and seances far more than history likes to admit.
Plus, her love affair that rocked the royal family.
This is Queen Victoria, the Widow of Windsor, as you've probably never met her before.
I'm so excited to have a royal expert here to help us really unpack one of my favorite monarchs. So I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about her as well.
She's also one of my favorites. Love that Vicky. Love her.
Vicky. I don't think she screams Vicky to me, but I love the casualness.
I think she does scream Vicky, but at her daughter, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yes, her eldest daughter, also named Victoria, she named Vicky. Her mom, also named Victoria. We just call the Duchess of Kent. She's one of many Vickies in that line.
One of many Vickies. Well, for the Hidden History of Magick listeners who don't know, Kristen is a cultural critic, she's a lifestyle journalist, and she's our royal reporter. She's the host of the podcasts Mayo Clinic's Health Matters and The Nightly. And she's also the author of So You Want to Start a Podcast and How to Be Fine. Kristen, we are so excited to have you. What's your relationship to Queen Victoria? Where do you find her in your, cultural zeitgeist?
Well, I think of her as the queen who just loved sex and her husband. That's kind of how I was introduced to her. I was a teenager and, either high school or college. And I remember my instructor at the time just explaining how the whole Victorian era, which a lot of people think of as buttoned up and you can't show an ankle, the woman the era was named after, she and her husband were constantly going at it and exchanging love trinkets and having racy portraits made of each other. And everything about those two just screamed sex, sex, sex. And she hated the fact that sex kept leading to her getting pregnant because she hated being pregnant. And
Yes.
she had 9 kids. And if she had her way, she would not have had kids at all for the first 10 years together. And then maybe had a couple of them later on. But why do kids have to come up with this wonderful thing that I love to do with my husband?
A Catholic question we've been asking, for generations.
Yes.
Indeed.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Rhiannon, should we set the scene for being in the 1800s for our audience?
Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 1846. Women in the UK were wearing classic Victorian looks out of the parlor. Think tight-fitting bodices, big hoops, high collars, cameo pins, and locket necklaces. The upper class swooned over opera ballads, and audiences were clamoring for the latest serial from Charles Dickens. Across the pond, Americans had their first official baseball game in Hoboken, New Jersey, and the New York Nine defeated the Knickerbockers 23-1 in 4 innings.
Meanwhile, Queen Victoria, a petite powerhouse standing at 4'11", and her beloved Prince Albert are entertaining a circle of elite guests at their summer house. The entertainment? A seance led by an 11-year-old mystic named Georgina Eagle. aka the Mysterious Lady. But this seance won't be the Queen's last. Her life is about to take an unexpected turn, full of heartache, grief, and the responsibility of an empire. Plus, she's about to meet the medium who's going to turn her life upside down and spark a love affair that rocks the royal family. Before we dive into her relationship with Albert, I think something really interesting about her is just how young she was thrown into the throne, being just 18 years old, kind of getting that knock on the door. We have her journal entries where the archbishop and the lords come in and basically say, you know, you're queen now, it's your time. Kristen, from your perspective, was she ready to be queen? Was she expecting it? Is anyone expecting to be queen? Is that a fair question?
Well, her mom and Conroy, her right-hand man, they really kept Victoria under lock and key. She wasn't allowed to ever sleep in a bedroom by herself. She had to sleep with her mom until adulthood. She was not allowed to walk down the stairs unless she was holding her mom's hand. She wasn't allowed to be in the company of anybody else without her family in the room at all, whether it was playing with other kids or going on a walk or anything else, not allowed to. In a way, some might say, oh, they set her up to not be a good queen. They set her up to be a child for her whole life, so there's no way she could have been ready to be queen. But there are others who say she was perfectly set up to be queen because she was able to, from a very young age, know, I want to break off on my own. I have ideas in my head that deserve to be out in the world. I'm being held back and I know I'm capable of more. And apparently her governess, when she was growing up, helped to cultivate that free thinking, helped to teach her how to be a critical thinker, not just an obedient child. So maybe she was ready to be queen, maybe she wasn't. But I also think 18, God, I don't know about you, Erin and Rhiannon, but 18, I was such a dum-dum. I should not have been ruling an entire empire when I was 18.
Absolutely. Well, I was running the TJ Maxx, customer service counter, but that was about it.
I think my favorite thing about Queen Victoria is because of this relationship with her mother and John Conroy and how controlling, and I think technically I would use the word abusive. They isolated her, they kept her from friends, and so you would think that she would be naive or sheltered, but there's something about the fact, the moment that she knew that she was going to be queen is when she started to kind of stand up for herself. And there's one story about how she had this horrible fever and her mom wanted her to do something or say something or sign off on something. And
to sign away her rights to be queen when she was 18. Her mom and Conroy were saying, oh no, I won't take the throne at 18. I'll wait until several years later and let Mumsy and Conroy do everything and act as the regent in my place.
Oh, see, that's how you know they weren't protecting her. And so she just said no. And that was like the beginning of this era of being stubborn and decisive. And I think that in a way, the way that they raised her backfired in a very positive way.
It's crazy. And one of the interesting things that we have is that she wrote 141 volumes of her diary. So we have a really detailed, and I will say detailed lightly because her kids did go through the diaries and scrub certain information and hide certain stories, burn certain things. But we do have, these kind of place card moments for these really big eras of her life.
Yes. They burned a lot of what she wrote about a servant that we'll probably end up talking about later, John Brown.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get to John Brown.
Yeah, and some other diaries as well. But fortunately, there are some details that are still out there that I just love that contribute to her sexy, racy love with Albert. And, other stuff, too, that she wrote that's interesting. But I especially love that whole Albert lust situation.
Well, let's get to Albert. They're first cousins. They meet when she is 17 years old. And when she becomes queen at 18, she is not allowed to be proposed to. Is that right, Kristen? Is that the royal rule?
Yes, the monarch must do the proposing.
So I thought that was kind of interesting that like she got to pick her suitor. She got, a couple of princes rotated in and out that she got to meet. And she ultimately decided that she wanted to marry Albert. And then she talks about their wedding evening. This is from her diary. She writes.
Can we first talk about how when she meets him, she just is like, oh my God.
He's so hot.
He has the finest teeth I have ever seen. Check out his adorable nose. Look at his big blue eyes. His hair is the same color as mine. Is there anything more beautiful than our hair color? I cannot get enough of his exterior. And then she writes a letter to her Uncle Leopold, who introduced her to her cousin, and is like, Uncle Leopold, you have secured me every happiness in the world through this person. Thank you. He's so hot. Have I mentioned how good looking he is? Yeah. I think that's word for word from her letters.
It's pretty much there.
Yeah.
What I love about it too is that their first meeting, I don't know when it was age-wise, but I think it wasn't a good encounter because he was sick with like dysentery or something at the time. And so he spent a lot of the time away and asleep at the table. And so she was not interested in him. And it wasn't until later when she met him for real and she got to see who he was that she fell in love. So it was like love at second sight.
Yes.
And there's something really fun about having, like, you can, if it's meant to be, it'll happen.
It'll find
even
you.
Yes, even if you're away at the toilet for your whole first meeting.
Here's what she writes about her wedding night. I never spent such an evening, ! 3 times. My dearest,
Also all
dear.
caps. Don't forget the
all caps, Albert.
Which I think she also started that. No.
His excessive love and affection gave me the feelings of heavenly love and happiness. He clasped me in his arms and we kissed each other again and again. She goes on, but basically says this was the happiest day of my life. So
Yes.
he put it down. Albert did it.
He seems like a very generous lover that he actually does care about her needs, possibly. Possibly. Yeah. Also, she's probably just so happy to not be in bed with her mom.
Oh,
That's true.
It's so funny set against the prudish nature of the Victorian era that they were just so busy boning all over the place whenever they could.
Yeah.
There is something that's really fun about how stubborn she was, how ferocious she was as a leader, how horny she was as a leader. The fact that we're about to get into her relationship with spirituality as a leader, but also the queen over the horrific potato famine that lasted 4 years of people starving to death. And it wasn't just that, the crops went bad, but it was also because the crops were being exported to England and they weren't sharing. And so here was this horrific thing that was happening under her because of policies that existed under her rule. And also, paradoxically, she was the largest fundraiser for charity for the people impacted by the policies that she put into place. And then, I mean, the whole idea of colonizing India and yes, and the fact that they were revolting under her rule as well. So we have that piece of it. And also her fascination with the people and culture of India, where the people who were hurt and displaced by her, she was inviting them to England so that she could talk to them and hear about their experiences. So she's fascinating because there's clearly dark, harsh stuff that's happening. She's the power and the soother in a way.
She's part of the problem, but she's also in some ways part of the easing the problem slightly, sometimes.
Slightly. Yes, exactly.
Ever so slightly.
Yeah.
Is that how culture remembers her, Kristen? Is that like part of her story, or are we a harsher critic to her looking back?
No, I think all of this is true. I think she had a complex reign. One reason why she's so beloved, though, I have to say, is she and Albert were frequently on the receiving end of assassination attempts. And every time there was an assassination attempt, people are like, oh, but that's our queen. We love her.
I know. There were like 3 or 4 shootings. There was a horse accident. I mean, this woman like really went through it.
She really did. And every time an assassination attempt happened, the people rallied. They're like, oh, but that's our queen. Hold on just a second. We love her. And also, I think that Albert was in a lot of ways more of a humanitarian than she was, and probably helped her to be maybe less of a tyrant than she otherwise could have been. He was very, very anti-slavery, for example. He was anti-child labor. And I'm not sure if she would have thought about those things at all if it weren't for Albert's influence. He really cared about the arts, the sciences, international relations as far as like exchange of science and art. He essentially created the first World's Fair, which some people laughed at the time because they're like, oh, what's this project that the little man at home gets to work on? And then it ended up being a huge international hit. People are like, this is the greatest thing of all time. Why don't we always have international fairs? World fairs are a great thing. And so in a lot of ways, Albert made her a better person and a better monarch, but she was still very flawed.
Yes. And I think it's really sweet. I'm trying to find it, but I do remember that she had a diary entry from the World Fair where she was just so proud of Albert.
Yes.
She was gushing about what a beautiful job he did and how terrific he is as a person because of it.
Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of innovative forethought about the world and about, all these new things that are coming along, like telegraphs and electricity, and we know about magnets now, and what does all of this mean, and what is this part of the world doing with it, and what is that part of the world doing with it, and how can we get these innovations in one place? And I also think, since we're talking about spiritualism today, I think that those things are very closely intertwined. A lot of the interest in spiritualism in the mid-1800s was related to these things that seemed otherworldly and divine at the time. Like, how do you explain electricity? How do you explain me in this country being able to tap on this machine and you in that country know what I'm saying to you? It really was a period of mystery and awe as far as not everything can be explained by most lay people, but it makes me feel like I'm not alone in this world. It makes me feel like the world is a lighter place. It makes me feel like I can talk to people who aren't here.
Yes, I
So
love
well
that.
said, yeah.
And I think what's fascinating is that, sometimes people get into mediumship or spirituality because of a death or a loss or something tragic that happens. But what's interesting about Queen Victoria and Prince Albert is that it was a thing that they did together.
Yeah, and they weren't alone. It was an incredibly popular thing to explore spiritualism, to do parlor seances, especially with the middle and upper classes. This was a fun form of entertainment. Some people saw it as party tricks. Some people saw it as a truly spiritual or religious experience.
And I think we should talk about seances for a second. Seances can kind of manifest in many different ways. Kristen, to your point, sometimes it's like more of a party or more of entertainment. Sometimes it was like a Ouija board energy of like people sitting around a table. But essentially it was the delivering of messages from beyond the veil. I mean, that was kind of pretty much first and foremost. And I will say, as a medium myself, everyone kind of runs their program in a different way depending on how they connect. So, we can't probably have a solid definition for it because every medium is going to interpret information from spirit in their own way.
Hi, this is Erin here, just popping in with a quick producer's note about seances. I recently learned that one of the main ingredients in Victorian seances was that those in attendance needed to be a mix of both men and women. So, for example, if there were like 6 men invited, there needed to be 6 women to balance the energy of the room so that the magic could occur. And this is a really interesting detail because it's a theme that will be sprinkled throughout the podcast. Spiritualism is one of the only religions that not only celebrates women's spiritual experience, but it actually makes space for them at the table. So one could speculate that for Queen Victoria, a young woman on the verge of her understanding and exploring her own ruling power would be attracted to a practice that honors and sees that. Okay, now back to the conversation.
And so shall we talk about what happens when Albert passes? He passes when he is 42 years old.
So young.
From a stomach condition. Victoria is so overwhelmed with grief that she famously wears black for the rest of her life. I mean, this is like a soul gut-wrenching grief that she carries with her throughout her life. And with that, withdraws from public life. And I think in the beginning gets sympathy from it. They call her the Widow of Windsor. But then after a while, I think people are kind of like, well, where'd you go, babe? So
Like all of us have lost family members too, and we still do our jobs. Are you going to do your job?
Yes.
You're the queen. Like it's been years now. Years we haven't seen you. You're hidden away. And she also put the rest of her family in a state of mourning where they all wore black for years too. And then after that, they went into partial mourning where they were only allowed to wear dark colors like gray and purple, but were still essentially publicly in mourning years after.
Wow.
And
For context, it was 40 years. No, not like a decade. It was 40 years of mourning, so almost as long as Albert lived.
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And the mourning was so extreme that the coffin portraits of him taken while he was in his coffin, they were painted onto the headboards of the beds in the palace, and a plaster cast of his hand was made that she slept with every night until she died. And his bed chambers were set up every night after he died exactly as they were when he was living. Hot water to wash himself with, clean sheets, and the little glass by his bed that he drank out of on the last night before he died, that glass was never allowed to be moved. It stayed right there.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And I think this is a good time to explain maybe what the spiritualist movement was. The official spiritualist movement was born in the U.S. in the late 1840s, and then it made its way to England. It spread like wildfire. It was wildly popular. The core belief behind the spiritualist movement is simply that spirits live beyond death. They believed that there was proof of life after death because they had these spirit photos became all of the rage, where they were taking pictures, trying to capture ghosts in the photos. And so there are charlatans, right, who are cashing in on this craze. It became really popular in the media. And because you have these photos that are circulating, there's something tangible that people can hold on to. And it was also at a time when people were, Christianity was so everywhere prevalent, but it didn't really help people with grieving after someone's death in a way that this movement created hope and support for people where there was a lot of death at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like on average, at least 4 in 10 children did not make it to age 5. This is a time where people are dying all the time as children. They're dying as adults. They're dying cooking because something as simple as making dinner and your skirts catching up on fire and then getting an infection in the burn wounds killed millions of women. And then, of course, the Civil War in the U.S. in the 1860s. I mean, so many people, families, communities were wiped out by the Civil War, too. So there was a lot of sadness, a lot of mourning happening.
Yeah. And so I think that desire to know that there's something beyond death is really beautiful. And I do think that in any movement, there are people who prey on that. And so there are charlatans who came forward and claim to have heard the voice of Prince Albert, but there were also some people who were very legitimate.
Queen Victoria received the Spiritualist magazine, and in the magazine, she reads an article about a medium named Robert James, who they call Jimmy Lees, and he essentially is channeling Prince Albert. And so she has 2 of her trusted advisors go down and check it out and hear him channel. And essentially, we learn that he is giving up details that are so personal that no one could know. And so she invites him back to her home. They have, I read, in total of 9 seances where they are welcoming Prince Albert back, and she's able to connect to him through messages from this medium.
Yeah, and apparently when he would channel Albert, he would actually speak in a voice that sounded exactly like Albert. Like, what? And he's calling me my pet name that nobody knows except me and Albert? What? What's going on here? So the queen was very, very enchanted with him and really believed he was legit.
Yeah, one of my favorite details too, because again, lots of people were claiming, and so that's why she had to send her people to go scope it out, check it out. And the people that she sent used fake names.
Yes, and they disguised themselves.
Yes, and in their conversation, little Jimmy Lee kept referring to them as their real names.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, she's so enthralled with this guy. She wants him to kind of come in, be the royal medium. And he actually is the one who points the energy towards John Brown, who's already working for the queen. He kind of takes over the role as her kind of spiritual companion, channeling messages from Albert. Kristen, what do we know about John Brown and her relationship other than, I mean, there's lots to go into, but do you know anything about kind of their beginnings?
Yeah, well, Jimmy Lee said, I appreciate the invitation to be your full-time clairvoyant, but I have other things I need to do in this world. And there were a lot of things he wanted to do. And he ended up writing books. He ended up helping to work with Scotland Yard on certain cases, most famously Jack the Ripper in that case. And the Queen said, okay, well, James Lee said, I'm supposed to track you down and you're supposed to be the next person to help me. And she formed such a tight relationship with Brown that it became scandalous. There were rumors that they were secretly married. There were rumors that they were having sex with each other. She made up awards and medals just for him, just like, oh, this is the Faithful Companion medal. You know, the world famous Faithful Companion medal that I just made up. And she would make up medals. She had statues made of him when he died. She commissioned a poem from Alfred Tennyson to be on his gravestone. She was really, really into John Brown.
She's such a lover girl. She
was so into him. Yeah. And supposedly he was involved in seances. Some people say, no, that's just hearsay. But some people say, maybe it's not hearsay. Maybe because half those records were burned by the children. We don't fully know what happened as far as the spiritual practices of John Brown and the Queen together. But she really leaned on him to be a rock for her in lots of ways, and a rock in the ways that Albert was. And let's not forget, Albert was also somebody who believed in spiritualism, so it would make sense for her to choose the next man to be the rock in her life who would believe in a lot of the same things.
As a medium myself, I find this story to be so fascinating because there's something that happens when you're channeling and you kind of feel and embody the emotions or love being projected. To me, feels like a real recipe for falling in love and for being in a space where all you're hearing are these, beautiful love messages. Obviously, Albert was one of, the great soulmates of her existence. And so for this guy to then have to channel that love, it feels like pretty obvious that they would kind of conclude together and kind of almost in my brain, I see it as like a throuple. Where like the two of them are together, but then also it feels like a little bit of sex magic where Albert's like in the fold. Like they're energetically, like things are happening.
Yeah. Oh no, he's definitely Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost.
Yes, I was just going to say exactly the same thing. It's like, Demi, she is Vicky, Patrick Swayze, Albert, and then John Brown is definitely Whoopi. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and what I love about how John Brown entered the picture too. So we have the one clairvoyant saying it's that boy, right? And one of the things that Queen Victoria recalled after hearing that it was this boy was she remembered that the last time that she was leaving Balmoral, where he was, that he had said, have a great safe travels and I hope no one dies. And then 3 people in her family died, including Prince Albert. And so that was her sense that, he might be clairvoyant already.
Or he's a murderer.
Oh, who knows? That's true. Oh, let's leave it open for that.
Yes.
But the other piece of it, too, is that the first time that he channeled Prince Albert for her, he did it in Albert's voice and accent, which is mostly astonishing because this was a Scottish boy from the Victorian Scotland. So that his regular accent was probably so thick and insane, and to be able to suppress it just to have the voice of Albert would be a magical feat that most actors can't even do today.
Yeah, and also not just the regional accent, there's also the class accent. There's a very big difference between the Queen's English and I'm a gilly working in the Scottish Highlands accent, a working class huntsman versus somebody who lives in a palace. Very different accents.
Okay, hold on a minute, guys. The producer is letting me know that we have some exciting news. We've just got our hands on a rare and exclusive clip of John Brown channeling Prince Albert that you won't hear anywhere else. Let's take a listen.
Your Royal Highness, it's an honour to see you. And let me just say, it's a pleasure being your gilly. But I know you're not here to talk about that. You're here for my psychic gifts. So let me take a few breaths and get into the spirit. Ugh. Ah. Victoria, oh, how happy I am to see you again. I'm so sorry to have left you alone on this earthly plane. You've been a cruel, cruel victim of circumstance. Oh, Bunny, how I miss the nape of your neck. How I miss your earlobes, especially the left one. Come to me, my love. Come to me and let us waltz one final time. Great jumping haggis, I'm back. Why are you so close to me? You're right in my face. What did he say?
Wow, that was historic. And now, back to the podcast.
They were together for, I believe it was over 20 years. He served as her kind of confidant. He slept in the room next to her. He had, unfeathered access to her when she was sick, much to the chagrin of her kids, I will say. It seemed like there was a lot of tension between who held power and who got access to her.
Yeah. And also, a lot of the family was really taken aback by he didn't know his place. Your station in life. And he would call the queen woman rather than your majesty or your royal highness. He would be like, woman, no, that's not that. And so the way he would talk to her, I think in a way she liked it because the only other person who talked to her like she was a human was Albert when he was alive. Everybody else did bow. Everybody else give her so much reverence. And John Brown's like, I'm not bowing to you. I'm just going to talk to you. I'm going to tell you what's what. And that's what he did. So I think that was part of what she enjoyed about him too. Just like, oh, this is a man who puts me in my place. Yeah.
It's very enemies to lovers.
What's really interesting about that too is that when Prince Albert died, one of the first things that she said is, who's going to call me Victoria now?
Yes. And almost as good. She's got someone who calls her woman. Yeah.
Yes.
But she loved John Brown so much that when she eventually died, she was buried as per her instructions, not just with Albert's dressing gown and the plaster cast of his hand. She also was buried with a lock of John Brown's hair, a photograph of John Brown, John Brown's mother's wedding ring, which John Brown had given to her, and several letters. So she had both of them in the grave with her when she was buried.
Such a loyalist, to be like, not only like honoring her relationship with Albert, but then also giving him the space. I think there's something really beautiful about that as well.
Yeah, it almost reveals that she didn't just use him as a channel or a medium, that she wasn't just trying to get to Prince Albert through him, but she saw him as she revered the role that he played in her life too.
And spoiler, at the end of this episode, we're going to do a bonus where I share some of my channeling with Queen Victoria, and I will deep dive a little bit about what she tells me about each relationship. And Rhiannon, what she shared with me is that it started as something, but then the love kind of became this whole other building block in her life and place of stability.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Erin and Rhiannon, after John Brown dies, we know that the queen then has a new constant companion, Abdul Karim, who arrives in India to serve at the Golden Jubilee with the queen. And she then decides he's the bee's knees. He pretty much takes on the same role as John Brown. They have an intellectual connection. She loves learning about the ways of India. She loves his spiritual outlook on life. I think she's definitely one of those white women who's like, people in India are on a higher plane. She's totally like that with him. And so she really takes great comfort in him. And once again, her family hates it. He's not of the right station. He's not white, which they're very upset about that. I'm curious though, Erin and Rhiannon, do you think that Abdul Karim also was doing any seances or channeling with the queen?
My opinion, because the first time that I heard that she was into this stuff, I thought the person,
I kept confusing John Brown and Abdul. And so they do refer to him as a spiritual guide, and he would like read the Quran with her. And there was that kind of connection. And I feel like it's a very slippery slope. I mean, she is doing that white girl thing of like, tell me your, like, ooh,
Tell me your brown worldview.
Yeah. and then let me tell you how to do it. And so maybe she did introduce in mediumship, or I imagine that it would be this. I mean, she is so clingy and so lover girl that I can't imagine her not sharing her perspective and trying to bring him in as much as she allowed herself to be brought into his world.
I will say I have some thoughts about this from what I channeled with her, but my perspective from like the evidence that we have is that she doesn't have anything of his in her grave when she dies. And so that to me feels like it was more of a friendship. And also I would imagine if you had Albert was this great, like once in a lifetime love, you have all these kids, like you're on top of the world. He dies, you kind of accidentally fall in love again, have another kind of whirlwind romance. I imagine like her at her age and her heart maybe couldn't take another go. She's outliving everyone. She's seen a lot of death in her life. And so for me, I felt like maybe she couldn't open herself energetically to romance, but was so deeply connected and obviously very, needed people in her life to be around and to chat with and to keep her company, and was codependent in that way. So it felt like he filled that realm, but I don't think energetically it was romantic. But I'm sure spiritual stuff, I'm sure they were up to saying, I'm sure they were doing it all.
Yeah, the rumor that I'm going to start right here is that she tried to get him to do seances and he said no. And so she was like, not in my casket. You are banished.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
No. What I would love to know, Kristen, is more about this scandal and how the people would have responded, because we know that it was a scandal in the home, and that makes sense. That's very monarch. But did this scandal escape at all at the time?
Some people supposedly had feelings about John Brown outside the household itself, and the optics of Abdul Karim, who was frequently at the Queen's side after John Brown's death. Some people took issue with the optics of that, and by that we mean racism.
Yes.
And after the Queen died, Abdul Karim was ousted entirely. Go back to your country, get out of here. It did not matter that he was the Queen's favorite. He lost every privilege there was and was essentially sent off into exile. Like, you're not allowed near us anymore. So there were strong feelings against both John Brown and Abdul Karim. Oh, one other thing about John Brown and how people felt about him. So the Queen, as I mentioned, had a special grave site made for him, statues, a poem from Alfred Tennyson commissioned, all of these things in prominent places at the palace. And then after she died, her kids essentially removed and destroyed all of those. They're like, nope, getting rid of that guy. He's gone. Mom doesn't know anymore. She's not here, so she doesn't care. So yeah, people who would visit the grounds would see those statues. They were very well aware that he had a very special spot in the Queen's heart. But then the Queen's kids, after she died, they were like, we can't let outsiders see anymore this love fest she has for this dude. It's too blatant. It's too lovey-dovey. The stuff that she had written up about him on all of these plaques made it sound like he was the greatest love of her life and the second coming of Christ. So the family's like, no, it's too obvious. Her feelings for him are too blatant, too obvious, too racy. We're removing all of this stuff.
Wow. This is kind of the perfect segue into the cover-up, because part of what we want to talk about a lot on this podcast is that this stuff was happening, and a lot of times it was an open secret, but we don't hear about it because there is this cover-up element to it. And it's interesting because it sounds like and feels like part of the cover-up of her experience with spiritualism is to hide the embarrassment of that, especially as the head of the Church of England, right? It doesn't vibe with Christianity to play with necromancy and spirits and all of that, right? I mean, some would even say it's the work of the devil, or, it's very much not aligned. But it sounds like the cover-up was also with her love and relationships too. And she didn't get to just exist as this really complex lover girl, horny queen that she was.
Yeah. I mean, the family wanted her to be remembered as the queen. If any relationship was going to be remembered, it was going to be her relationship with Albert. And if you go to the UK, you'll see a gazillion monuments to Victorian Albert, not just the Victorian Albert Museum, but sculptures all over the place, different entertainment halls, different businesses, and to the point where at one point, people in the UK were like, we get it, you love Albert. There's so much stuff about Albert in this. We get it, Vicky. You love the guy, okay? And I think the family, they knew that was already pretty heavy-handed and enough, and they didn't need another guy added to the legacy in the mix. So let's knock down those monuments to John Brown.
Poor John Brown. I'd be remiss not to share that this is the week of her and Albert's wedding anniversary. They got married 2 days ago on February 10th.
Oh, wow.
So a little synchronicity for us here.
So close to Valentine's Day.
I know. Wow. Very romantic.
Kristen, I'm curious what you think the takeaway of Queen Victoria's spiritualism, if any. Do you feel like it was able to get out there in culture? I mean, I will share that the Spiritualist Church is alive and well today. There's over 300 in the UK, so it's something that's still active. But do you think that her kind of legacy in that trickled out at all?
I think that it was a popular thing for upper class people to do, to go to seances, to have these parlor tricks played on them, sometimes knowingly, where people would be like, yeah, someone's in the chimney making that sound. It would be a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was done more seriously. It ran the gamut where people would go because it was fun, or people would go because they really wanted to talk with somebody that they'd lost. And it's really not one of those things in my mind where it's like always perfect in goodness and light or always charlatans. I think there was a big mix of things, and sometimes that overlapped. And so, I mean, I think because Queen Victoria enjoyed doing it, and because a lot of other people did at the time, I think some people will read that as like, oh yeah, she's just a woman of her times who liked doing what other rich ladies liked doing then. But above all, she was spreading Christianity around the world. She was on top of the kingdom. She was, she was very much the head of the church, and she did apparently have more tolerance for different types of Christianity than the monarchs before her. But not that that's super open-minded.
Right.
I accept both this kind of Christianity and this type. But, she also had that curiosity about different religions of India and so on. So I think in some ways she was seen as more open-minded when it came to religion than those who came before her.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to shake her away from the institution, which is so far-reaching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of her identity and her job.
Part of what's interesting and paradoxical about this, too, is that it's her job and she did it very well. And also it's her job and she disappeared for 40 years in mourning. And so she did her job and she didn't do her job and she did. So it's hard to be a woman in power. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
What I love about Victoria's relationship with spiritualism too is that it's because she married for love, which I think is very rare, not just for monarchs, but just at the time in general, but especially for people in power. They were often contracts. Yes. And so the fact that it was
frequently about strategic partnerships with other countries or other kingdoms and so on. And maybe my daughter's going to marry your son and neither of them speak the same language. Yeah.
Oof. Yes. Yeah. So the fact that she married for love and it was this like soulmate, all-consuming relationship even after his death, I think that it reminds us that what the spiritualist movement can teach us, what Victoria can teach us, is that maybe there is a way that souls live on after death. And she's this really interesting lesson of like letting go. When do you let go? And can just trust that they're still with you, but also that you can communicate and feel the presence people with you. I feel like I've lost both my parents. And so when I lost my mother as a child, my relationship with grief was really different because I was a child. And my understanding of the world and death was, pretty limited at the time. And then by the time I lost my father, I had a different relationship with what happens after you die. And the way that the grief process worked is so different because I know very differently that I always have access to, I don't know, like ask for a sign, or I did a session with Erin and and had very clear messages and specific information about my family that passed, and just knowing that is enough for me to not necessarily hold on and call Erin every 20 minutes when I need to talk to my mom or my grandparents or whoever. But it does give me the relaxation that I can go on with my life knowing that I still carry them with me somehow. And I think that I really love that that's available to us through these stories.
Yeah. And something that, what you were talking about just makes me think of something else, that the idea that it's not just your parents, but maybe your grandparents as well, and how that gets passed on generationally, how loss is felt not just with the people directly above you who died, but before that and before that. And in Queen Victoria's family, that was certainly the case because 40 years after the Queen's death, her daughter, Princess Louise, was meeting with mediums to try and talk to her mom. Most famously, Leslie Flint claimed to communicate with Queen Victoria during his seances. And so, that loss, it's not just when it's fresh, like right after Albert dies. It's decades later where Princess Louise is still thinking about her mom.
I love the idea that we're always in some way like communicating with our ancestors and kind of reaching back and trying to get advice and information and get those signs. I think that's such a human experience. And I, for one, am grateful that Queen Victoria went down her spiritual road to kind of open the door, even if it was just a crack for anyone else to kind of explore or feel comfortable in it. Kristen, this has been absolutely incredible. And I will say, Kristen's going to join us for our Patreon episode where I share a couple of messages from Queen Victoria, including her marriage advice. Yes. So you'll want to stick around to hear what she says about that. Kristen, where can people find you? Is there anything you want to plug here at the end of the show?
Sure. So you can always find me on my website, KristenMeinzer.com. You can learn about all my podcasts there, my TV appearances, the different projects that I work on. If you like health news, I host Health Matters from the Mayo Clinic, where I talk with doctors and scientists about everything from GLP-1s to how to consume the news in a way that doesn't make you mentally crazy. And I also am a co-host of a podcast called The Nightly, which is a bedtime podcast for pop culture lovers. It's a podcast designed for you to fall asleep to, so you don't even have to stay awake to listen to it. That's The Nightly. And I'm also the co-host of a podcast, My So-Called Life TV Club, which we're rewatching every single episode of My So-Called Life and recapping and giving our thoughts on the show 30 years later, 30 years after the fact.
Incredible.
Amazing.
So many fun things. Before we wrap, I just want to thank 2 patronettes who joined our Patreon before we even had any content live, Charlotte S. and Jacqueline M. We just want to thank you guys so much for being part of the Hidden History of Magick community. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, see you later, where we'll dive into even more scandal and even more magic.
Welcome, everyone, to our first bonus episode of the Hidden History of Magick, where we are going to dive into talking more about Queen Victoria, her legacy, her spiritualism, and her marriage advice.
Yes.
Which I thought to be very scandalous and salacious. So I'm excited. I will say that as a medium, usually I set a container for when I want to channel, meditate, and receive information. However, Rhiannon and I had kind of a business meeting yesterday, and after the meeting, we had both kind of welcomed Queen Victoria to the show energetically. And I will say, when I was laying in bed with my daughter last night, all of a sudden I started to feel a presence and started to get information and messages and the smell of smoke the taste of whiskey. And so it all started kind of flooding in last night. And so I was jotting a couple of things down and then kind of continued the conversation this morning. So excited to share some messages from Queen Victoria.
I love this. Yeah. And one of the ideas behind these bonus episodes is that we realize that, you know, you can get a lot of history from a lot of sources, and we're happy to share the history and talk about that. But something that because, you know, we have the joy of having Erin, who is a medium, here with us, that we also have the opportunity to play with the magic that we're so interested in. We have the gifts to speak with the people who are kind of breaking barriers in this way. And so why not take this extra time to play a little more in the magic? And so I'm so glad that you connected with her, and I cannot wait to hear what she has to say because of how much she wrote in her diaries about her love. I love a lover girl.
Yeah, it was interesting too because I was kind of open to both Albert and John Brown, and they were not around at all. But Queen Victoria felt like she almost energetically was like, no, I will be the one you speak to, and there will be no one else. And I was like, okay, great.
All right, let's do it. Yes,
Yes, Queen.
Vicky, tell us.
Yes, Queen. Energetically, she held that. I mean, my first question for her was about John Brown, and so I'll just read you what we got here. She said, smooth transition from Albert's energy to his spark immediately, that there was comfort, a slow burn, but that evolved. She felt safe in his container because it was the three of them, her, Albert, and John Brown. She said that her children went back and forth about wanting their mom to be happy and feeling really uncomfortable by John Brown and not respected by him. She shared a flower with me that looked like a red lily, and then later showed me a blue one that I felt was to be like a poisonous flower, and I have yet to Google kind of their relationship to the crown. And then also it felt like her relationship to John Brown had like a slow romance to it in a completely different way than Albert. It almost felt like she got, you know, prince energy, and then she got kind of rugged man energy, as we said. And then she showed me that she was definitely like up to stuff in the sex magic department. Now, Rhiannon, I'm not like super familiar with sex magic, although I have performed, you know, a couple of things. Any thoughts about sex magic while we're in the Patreon corner?
Hidden behind a paywall.
Yes.
Well, I love that she got into
Kristen, I mean, please, the floor is open.
I have no experience with sex magic, but I am dying to know what Rhiannon says about it.
Okay. All right. We can't reveal the whole spell just yet. If you loved this preview, the full bonus episode is waiting right now in your feed. Subscribe and meet us on the other side. Thank you so much for listening to the Hidden History of Magick. If you like the show, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. This show is produced by Rhiannon Houch and Erin Bagwell. A very special thanks to our patrons who make this podcast possible.
To join our coven of gorgeous witches, get bonus episodes, attend live events, and learn real magic inspired by each episode, join us on Patreon.
If you would like your own personal reading from Rhiannon or Erin, check out our links in the show notes. Special thanks to Sal Mastrocola for our music and Baron Vaughn for his John Brown. Until next time.